like you got rejected. Let me see if you qualify or not. Spinning up in a tinted truck, riding around your block. Busy man, I get a word, he ain't this shit from top to bottom like a motherfucking ceiling fan. Hopping out the rental van, on my way to LAX. Brothers out in Cali and they killers out of every set. But I ain't crippin' on no blood. One West, all my niggas got it out the mud. Put your face on a t-shirt, memory of niggas acting tough in them songs, that's the drugs. I don't need no cases, all my pistols clean. So now I weigh my options, used to use the triple beam. Used to get the wok, mix it with the nicotine. Now I travel state to state and put on for my team.
The fuck wrong with them? Ain't on my level, I should let my dog get them. I see niggas and they feelings, I don't feel them. Keep the Glocky with me, it was like a ball with them. Me at the end, I gotta stay patient. They hate me, Lord, I gotta stay dangerous. You one of them? Yeah. What's the problem? I'm one West, go to war with everybody. Cut the grass for the snake, fuck the gospel. Front line with them soldiers, that's my posture. Gun drawn, trying to curse an imposter. Shit get out the pocket, go to war with everybody, yeah. Send that hate, make it to the featherweights. Niggas claim they hard, but they sweeter than a dedication. Hold on, think it's time to introduce. I'm a man and a beast and a step and a ruler. Hold on, and a G and a soldier and a mover. Hold on, and a killer and a prophet and a shooter, nigga. Trying to stay humble, my shit crazy. Cold leader, need the blue stripes, no brick baby. Can't be serious, you a funny boy, young fly. Look wrong, must be a dummy, I ain't gun shy. Fuck that little bitch, she a hook. Niggas swear he the go, bring him to the bush. The fuck wrong with him? Ain't on my level, I should let my dog get him. Niggas in their feelings, I don't feel them. Keep the Glocky with me, it was like a ball with him. We at the end, gotta stay patient. They hate me, Lord, I gotta stay patient. You one of them? What's the problem? I'm one West, go to war with everybody.
I'm from Philly, you get hot, you catch a cold case. I'm one West, these brothers trying to set my soul straight. They done turned me to a prophet from a demon, and I'm locked in this shit and I ain't leaving. Ski mask transform to war mode like I'm Voltron. Stamp on my head and my chest from the most high. Put something tight around your neck like a bow tie. Got my niggas waiting charged up like they phone died.
Red letter, drip clean, it looks so fly. Claim he riding, that's why I left his ass roadside. He gon' die, skyscraper to a nosedive. 9mm plus P, fuck a 4-5. The fuck wrong with him? Ain't on my level, I should let my dog get him. I see niggas and they feelings, I don't feel them. Keep the Glocky with me, it was like a ball with him. We at the end, I gotta stay patient. They hate me, Lord, I gotta stay dangerous. You one of them? Yeah. What's the problem? I'm one West, go to war with everybody.
Shalom, Israel. Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah Baraka Thumb, Yahweh Shemala Thumb Bashim Yahweh Shah. This is ISUPK, started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commander General Rihanna. And we teach the truth concerning the Bible. That so-called Black, Hispanic, and North American Indians are the chosen people of God. And our oppressors is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Now, you tuned on Priest and Officer Howard Moore, ISUPK, Kentucky. And you're tuned in to our Monday night history class. And before we get into it, before we go ahead and get off into it, I want to invite every so-called Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian to tune into our weekly content. Monday night, of course, you got the history class. Tuesday night, Brotherhood class taught by Officer of 1,000. I'm a Wonga boy. And Wednesday night is the podcast, the baddest podcast around. Cry Out and Spare Not podcast, hosted by Officers of 1,000. I'm a Wonga boy in ISUPK. And come in here, these two powerful priests of the Lord break down your whole timeline. All right, get a biblical breakdown of all the viral videos going across the internet. It's like it. So Monday night history class, Tuesday Brotherhood class, and Wednesday night is the podcast. Now tonight, we finna get into the night. I got some heat for y'all. Tonight. We finna get into the fraud of the Freedman's Bank and the Homesteaders. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the Freedman's Bank was the bank that people used that couldn't go to a regular bank, meaning America's former slaves, North American Indians, Hispanics, etc., the people that weren't allowed to bank at white establishments. All right, so the Freedmen's Bank was mainly for America's former slaves, Hispanics, and North American Indians. Now, the Homesteaders were people from Europe, people from the slums of Europe that were coming to the United States between, let's say, the 1860s and the 1920s. All right. And this is going to cover, you ever hear white people talk about
skies of war, we ain't forget about you. Keep your light lit. Rappers can't see, most of them scared to witness. Go and close your eyes, there's one right here for the trenches. Bad bitches, natural hair or extensions. Hood niggas that'll probably grip like some ditches. Brothers on them fences, 23 and 1 out. Praying that the commissary hit before it run out. Bitches on the gram, dog filter with their tongue out. Couldn't stay home because they found the dugout. Closed casket, burner in the low jacket. My cold cabinet, riding on these whole rappers. My hoes fabulous. Now I don't mean that derogatory, but I'm a player and there's no my women riding for me. I avoided Maury. I got 2 jets. If I can't make it do for them, then I'm useless. Sit down that roof, Chris, with a couple bosses. After the war, just to count our losses. It's not many. You see a smile on my face, but I'm not friendly. Going on my way, sipping white Henny. I just hope this shit go right. Living in the dark, you don't know lie. Gotta got my heart with my bow tie. Waiting on the storm in my whole life. I just hope this shit go right. Living in the dark, you don't know lie. Gotta got my heart with my bow tie. Living in the storm in my whole life. It's so melodic. When I be dropping this ebonics, this ghetto phonics, they got me on the level supersonic. My bomb atomic, and you know where you can find me. Somewhere probably folding this paper origami. My name is pure as the Sani. My wave is like a tsunami. I went from 0 to 100, feeling like Ricky Bobby. I made a deal with the Reaper. Got a couple wives, they some keepers. Talk a lot of shit, but you can't walk a mile in my sneakers. Bitches go to Miami, come home with change features. Now she got a BBL, her ass fatter. Trying to show up all the niggas that laughed at her. Now when they see her, they only wanna fuck her. They just wanna touch her, they don't wanna cuff her. They just wanna come and kick it with her like a punter. Turned her to a runner, now it's all aboard the train. Fenty on her face, but it's not concealing the pain, it's a shame. So I'm in the hood like some rap snacks. I know niggas kill you and your mama for a scat pack. Dark tint, matte black, they do it for half that. Had you like 90s Missy in a fucking trash bag. I'm from Philly, we don't do bank accounts, just cash app. I spit a verse and I just watch the time slow. This that guy flow, this that shit that rappers die for. This that uncut Taha Wall straight from Pablo Escobar. I be at the ball like Moscato. They think it's effort, but no, this that Blackbird. Make the countermeasures, take pleasures, making an op hurt. Light is in the sky, cause every verse is a concert. My mind work at speed y'all can't fathom. Listen to the words of a champion. It can't, the streets need another anthem. I just hope this shit go right. Living in the dark, you don't know lie. Gotta got my heart with my bow tie. Waiting on the storm in my whole life. I just hope this shit go right. Living in the dark, you don't know lie. Gotta got my heart with my bow tie. Living in the storm in my whole life. My whole life.
All right, Salaki, y'all. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we back. We back and better than ever. So, like I was saying, we finna cover tonight. We finna cover the Freedman's Bank and the Homesteaders. All right, the Freedman's Bank, like I said, was a bank used by America's former slaves, North American Indians, and Hispanics, indigenous people of the Americas. And the Homesteaders were a group of impoverished white folks coming out of Europe. And they were coming here between the 1860s and the 1920s. All right. Now, this particular class is to give you ammunition to answer white people like this. All right. Have you ever heard white people say, well, my ancestors didn't own slaves. My ancestors came here in the 1890s and they were poor. All right. You ever heard a white person say that? Anybody in the chat, if you ever heard a white person say, my ancestors never owned slaves. My ancestors came here in the 1890s and they were poor and impoverished. We finna talk about and break down where the money came from to fund the trip. Where the money came from to fund the trip for these impoverished Europeans to come to the United States between the 1860s and the 1920s. And where the money came from might shock you. And tonight, we're not finna be vague tonight, Israel. We ain't finna be vague tonight. I got names, I got receipts, and I'm dropping names on y'all. All right, so it's not just gonna be the white man. It's not gonna just be some vague, something mysterious, right? It's not gonna be just a story. All right, I got names of the people. All right, and what happened and who funded the trip for these homesteaders that came here from Europe between the 1860s and 1920s. Again, I'm going to give y'all ammunition to be able to answer white people, the ones that say, well, hey, my ancestors never owned slaves. My ancestors came here from Germany in 1890, and they were poor, and they pulled themselves up from their own bootstrap. Look, we finna answer questions tonight. And again, it's going to be ammunition on how to deal with white people when they say their ancestors never owned slaves. They pulled themselves up from their own bootstraps. And we finna cover that tonight. And again, you only finna get this. You only finna get dropped like this in the ISUPK under Commander General Yohanan. I'm going to start off with the Freedman's Bank. We're going to start off with the Freedman's Bank. All right. Now, first thing I want y'all to know, all right, vital statistics, all right, classified all non-reservation Indians as Negro. All right. Virginia Vital Statistics classed all non-reservation Indians as Negroes. I need y'all to keep this in mind when we're walking down the Freedmen's Bureau. All right, Civil War and Emancipation. After the Civil War, millions of formerly enslaved people, many whom had deep ancestral ties to the land as indigenous descended people, were in a vulnerable position economically and politically. These communities were not simply passive victims. They had accumulated wealth, skills, and land, particularly in the South and in some urban areas. Now, what it's saying is that at the end of the Civil War, America's formerly enslaved people were not all passive victims. All right, some had accumulated wealth, skills, and land, mostly in the South. All right, how were freed people, including Aboriginal Indians, drawn into it? All right, the U.S. Army and Freedmen's Bureau influenced the Freedmen's Bureau. All right, U.S. Army and Freedmen's Bureau influence. All right, the Freedmen's Bureau, also created in 1865, was a powerful intermediary, controlled access to food, jobs, education, and legal aid. All right, the U.S. Army and the Freedmen's Bureau also promoted the Freedmen's Bank, directed to former slaves, indigenous freedmen, and mixed-race landholders as the only safe and legal place to deposit assets and money. Now, if you have freedmen in your family tree, you should be paying attention right now. If you have freedmen in your family tree, you might want to be paying attention tonight. All right, the Freedmen's Bank directed to former slaves, indigenous freedmen, and mixed-race landholders as the only safe and legal place to deposit assets and money. Many of the bank's agents were Union Army officers or Bureau staff. Now remember, after the Civil War, during the time of Reconstruction, the South was being put back together by Union soldiers. All right, lending it an era of military authority and legitimacy. All right. Now, America's former slaves, indigenous freedmen, all right, aka North American Indians, were blocked from other banks. All right, we didn't have access to other banks. So the only place that we could put our assets was in the Freedmen's Bank. All right, free people were systematically refused service by national and state charter banks. many national banks hostile to Black and indigenous customers, even if they had money or land. All right, local Southern banks often refused their business. Therefore, the Freedmen's Bank was the only approved option. So the Freedmen's Bank, because we were blocked out of everything else, the Freedmen's Bank was the only place that we could put our wealth and assets. All right, it says land sales, pension payouts, and military bounties and wages were deposited in the Freedmen's Bank. All right, so land, pension from serving in the military. All right, bounties and wages were deposited in the Freedmen's Bank. In many cases, bureau agents and officials handling payroll and titles directly transferred funds from the Freedmen's Bank accounts without informed consent. Now, we're going to read about that when we talk about the people that robbed the Freedmen's Bank. All right, Aboriginal descended landowners placed their titles or savings into the bank under pressure from the bureau or with encouragement from missionaries and federal agents. When it's talking about missionaries, it's talking about the church. We were under pressure, because we didn't have any other choice. We couldn't bank anywhere else. All right, but we also got put under pressure by the church and federal agents. Remember, in the South during Reconstruction, the Union was putting the South back together militarily. All right, it says, to answer your original question about how they were forced to deposit with the Freedmen's Bank other than national banks. All right, one, the Freedmen's Bank was marked as their bank. It was framed as a secure government-supported institution created specifically for freed people and friendly Indians. All right, America's formerly enslaved people, as well as North American Indians. They were encouraged to trust the bank due to its association with the Freedmen's Bureau and prominent Black leaders. All right, Black leaders, pastors, entertainers, athletes, all right, have always been our spokesperson since day one. All right, military, church, and Freedmen's Bureau officials guided them to the Freedmen's Bank. Many deposits were made at the suggestion of union officers, bureau agents, and local clergy. Again, that goddamn church. In some cases, formerly enslaved people or indigenous families were paid in vouchers or scrip that could only be redeemed or deposited at the Freedmen's Bank. All right, many of the depositors were mixed-race freedmen with Aboriginal ties, especially in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. With no deposit records, their titles and claims vanished in the collapse. All right, when the Freedmen's Bank failed, we're going to see how much money people lost. All right, the destruction of the Freedmen's Bank records was both deliberate and systematic, and it played a major role in severing financial, land, and legal ties for hundreds of thousands of Black and Aboriginal descended people. All right, when the Freedmen's Bank failed, hundreds of thousands of Black and indigenous people lost their life savings as well as generational wealth. All right, the bank failed June 29, 1874. The main office in Washington, D.C. mysteriously caught fire while under government control. All right, the fire destroyed bank books, ledger records, personal deposit slips, documentation of pensions, wages, and property associated with deposits. No formal investigation was ever conducted. All right, no formal investigation was ever conducted. All right, so bank books, ledger records, deposit slips, and documentation of wages and property associated with the deposits. All right, southern branches simply closed their doors overnight, and local managers fled or burned branch records themselves. All right, when the bank collapsed, people just hit it. All right, in Mobile, New Orleans, and Charleston, there are accounts of union officers or local contractors clearing out offices, destroying files, and boarding up buildings. Now, let's see what was lost. All right, the U.S. Treasury took over some files and held them in storage, but many were never cataloged, and some were deliberately excluded from federal archiving. So we'll never know. We'll never know the exact number. We'll never know the exact amount of money that was lost or stolen. We finna get into that too. All right, 1870, the trustees altered the charter so that the bank no longer needed to hold original deposit certificates or land title receipts. This meant if depositors couldn't present their own original paperwork, they had no claim. When the branch offices closed or burned, people lost everything and no copy remained. Remember, it said hundreds of thousands of people. All right, hundreds of thousands of people. All right, courthouse fires in Seminole and Orange counties destroyed land deeds and bank paperwork. All right, it destroyed land deeds and paperwork. All right, this is how Black and indigenous people lost land in the South. Remember, 1830 was the Trail of Tears, all right, Indian removal. All right, 1830, Indians in the South were pushed into Oklahoma. That's why I read earlier that non-reservation Indians got reclassified as Negro. We're talking about the people that chose to stay on their land and not go into Oklahoma. All right, these people also put money and their land deeds in the Freedman's Bank. But it said property sales to immigrants were conducted after such fires without documentation because the previous owners couldn't combat the sale. Remember I said earlier we were going to talk about the homesteaders, the people that were coming to the United States in the 1860s to the 1920s. Remember I said you hear white people talk about their ancestors came here in 1893. They never owned slaves. They came here poor. They pulled themselves up from their own bootstrap. No, they were getting land that we lost because we couldn't produce the titles, the deeds that were lost when the Freedmen's Bank failed. In cases where Freedmen sued banks for deposit losses, judges often declared the records had perished or were inconclusive. We're going to talk about these immigrants here in a minute. All right, Black Americans contributed $57 billion to the Freedmen's Bank. Now, again, this is just an estimate. I read you earlier that they don't have a complete record of everything that was lost. Money, land deeds, titles. We don't have an accurate account of exactly what was lost. But according to this source, Reconstruction and Robbery, all right, $57 billion in today's money, of course. All right, $57 billion to the Freedmen's Bank, which was corrupted by northern white capitalists and their business partners, and 61,000 Black families were robbed of their life savings and generational wealth. But what I'm going to show you is that it wasn't just lost. These trustees stole the money, and I'm going to show you. All right, Jay Cook and Henry Cook. I told y'all tonight we are naming names. It's not just going to be some vague white man. It's not going to be some story. All right, I'm giving you the actual history of how we were robbed of our land and wealth. And these were two of the culprits right here. All right, John Cook and Henry Cook. Again, we dropping names tonight. All right, the Cooks would take advantage of the Freedmen's Bank as their own banking and investment institution came under severe strain in the 1870s. Now, the Cooks were two of the trustees at the Freedmen's Bank. At one point, Henry Cook transferred $500,000 from the Freedmen's Bank to the First National Bank. He was able to do it because he was on the board. So money and land wasn't just lost. All right, these people were stealing money out of the Freedmen's Bank. All right, these people were stealing the wealth of Black and indigenous people fresh out of slavery. These two white men, the Cook brothers, were stealing money, stealing the wealth of Black and indigenous people fresh out of slavery. Fresh out of slavery. Now that 500,000 is about $12.2 million in today's money. All right, $12.2 million in today's money that they stole out of the Freedman's Bank. Now, what did it go to? The Cook brothers, heavily involved in both the Freedman's Bank and the railroad industry, actions significantly contributed to the bank's eventual collapse. All right, J. Cook's investment bank, J. Cook and Company, invested heavily in railroads, particularly Northern Pacific. And Henry Cook, as head of the Freedman's Bank Finance Committee, was a key player in the bank's mismanagement and fraud. They stole money from the Freedman's Bank and invested it in the railroad company. Stole money from the Freedman's Bank and invested it into the railroad company. Now, if your parents, right, if you grew up in the Midwest, if your father worked for the railroad, all right, chances are that railroad was financed from money that was stolen from his great-great-great-great-grandfather in the first place. All right. These people stole money from the Freedman's Bank and threw it toward Northern Pacific Railroad. All right. George Peabody. All right. George Peabody, another criminal. You might recognize him from the Peabody Hotel in Memphis. Same family. Same family as the Peabody Hotel in Memphis. All right, aid to the suffering South was the concern of many groups after the Civil War. Alongside the agents of the Freedmen's Bureau, the Peabody Fund, first of the major educational foundations in the country. All right, Peabody's philanthropy was generally believed to help Black communities, but some historians have criticized his involvement in the Freedmen's Bank. We got another criminal. That stole money from the Freedmen's Bank. And what did he do? Institutions were ultimately controlled by white individuals, and the money was not used in any way that effectively benefited the Black population. Having no son of his own, Peabody took on Junior Spencer Morgan as a partner in 1854, and their joint business will go on to become the global financial services firm J.P. Morgan. Another thief, another person that stole from the Freedmen's Bank, will go on to start a business that will become the global financial firm J.P. Morgan. All right, J.P. Morgan. Now, he was also involved in this social housing, all right, to improve the lives of the poor. Who were the poor? These poor people that were coming in from Europe, all right, these homesteaders, all right. He was involved in the social housing programs that was giving land and giving property to these poor people that were coming from Europe under the Homestead Act. These poor white folks that was coming here from Europe, again, between 1860 and 1920. Now, here comes one of the biggest criminals of all. All right, here comes one of the biggest criminals of all dealing with the theft of the Freedmen's Bank. And again, it's estimated that $56 billion was stolen out of the Freedmen's Bank. All right, estimated $56 billion was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank. And 60,000 plus Black families lost their family fortune, lost their life savings, and lost generational wealth. All right, if you want to know how we became poor, if you want to know how we became a permanent underclass, this is one of the criminals. Again, tonight, we're not just going to deal with some vague white man. All right, some phantom. We're not going to deal with just some story tonight. I'm giving you names of the criminals that robbed black people, that robbed North American Indians, robbed us of our land, robbed us of our money, our life savings. And Eli Thayer was one of the biggest culprits as well. All right, the Thayer family was connected to the Freedman Savings and Trust Company and a bank established 1865. All right, now I want to back this up a second. And give you some stats because this is important. You recall we talked earlier about, I told you earlier about dealing with white folks who say their family never had slaves. They came here in 1900, right? We're going to talk about how these people benefited from the theft of the Freedmen's Bank. All right, right now, as the 2020 Census Bureau, there's about 191 million white folks in the country. All right, 191 million white folks in the country. All right, about 83 million of these people are descendant from people that's been in America since the colonial period. All right, people that's been in America since the colonial period. All right, about 83 million white Americans can trace their lineage back to the colonial period. But 93 million Americans are descendant of homesteaders, meaning the majority of white Americans came to the Americas or came to the United States after 1865. All right, the majority of white Americans today are not descended from people that own slaves. All right, the majority of white Americans today are descended from people that came to the United States between 1860 and 1920. All right, they came here poor, but the story is they pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps. But the truth is, the money that financed the boat ride over here was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank. All right, stolen from black and indigenous people. These people didn't pull themselves up from their own bootstrap. All right, money that was stolen from the Freedmen's Bureau is what financed the boat ride for these homesteaders to come here. And these 160 acres they got a piece was given to them by land that was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank. Let's walk. All right. Immigrant Aid Company was a transportation company founded in Boston by Eli Thayer. We just talked about him. All right. Also was a trustee in the Freedmen's Bank. All right. The company's purpose was to transport anti-slavery immigrants to the Kansas Territory. And the point was to move these northern Republicans, all right, these northern abolitionists, and try to move them as far south as they possibly could to flip the political landscape in the South. All right, the company believed that if enough anti-slavery immigrants settled en masse in the newly opened territory, they would be able to shift the balance of political power in the territory. All right, Thayer's intention was to capitalize on anti-slavery sentiment in the northern United States and send settlers to Kansas to purchase land, build houses, shops, and mills. Now, this land, again, we talked about, this land was stolen from people that invested in the Freedmen's Bank. We read earlier, after land titles were lost, so-called lost or burnt up in these fires, that the original owners couldn't prove that they owned the land. All right. And this land was being given out to immigrants. All right. They could then sell the land back at a significant profit and send the proceeds back to Thayer and his investors. All right. The sponsors of the company did not believe in social or political equality for blacks. Of course not. You just robbed the Freedmen's Bank. All right. In addition to banning slavery in the territory, they also expected, if victorious, to ban black citizenship and property. All right. 1862, 1934, the federal government granted over 1.5 million homesteads to private citizens. 1.5 million homesteads to private citizens. All right, this land that they were being given was land that was robbed from people that were investing in the Freedmen's Bank. All right, the money that was paying for the boat rides over here for these homesteaders, these poor people that were coming out of Europe, the money that financed the boat rides over here was the money that was stolen out of the Freedmen's Bank. All right, this represents approximately 10% of the entire land mass of the United States. It was a massive transfer of land ownership from the federal government to individual citizens and inaugurated a series of land rushes during which homesteaders rushed in to settle the land at first come, first served basis. After the Compromise 1877 removed federal protections for Black Americans in the South, it became clear that anyone who attempted to resist racial oppression would be subjected to vigilante justice at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan or other white supremacist organizations. So meaning that after $50 billion was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank, and we lost all of our wealth, after we lost the title to all the land that was supposedly burned up in the fires when the Freedmen banks were burning down, these homesteaders were coming in from Europe. These poor white people were coming in from Europe and scooping up the land. And if we had anything to say about it, we were subjected to vigilante justice by the KKK. All right, 1862, the Homestead Act offered 160 acres of land to anyone who became a U.S. citizen or intended to become one, encouraged European immigration to settle. All right, these homesteaders were given 160 acres of land if they became U.S. citizens. And again, this was land that used to belong to Black and Indigenous people. This was land that was taken from us because we couldn't produce the original title, and all of the deeds was supposedly burnt up when these Freedmen banks were being burnt down. All right, Black Americans used to own 15 million acres of farmland in the South. Today, Blacks only own 1.1 million acres of farmland. All right, this was the theft. This was the theft of Black and Indigenous people, mainly in the South. All right. It says approximately $50 billion in today's money was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank. All right. And 10% of the area of the United States as far as land goes. And these European immigrants were getting 160 acres apiece, land that used to belong to us. All right. Again, tonight we are dropping names in this class. All right. The Freedmen's Bank mismanagement and eventual collapse, which resulted in significant financial losses for its depositors, contributed to a sense of distrust towards financial institutions and impacting the Great Migration and other economic and social trajectories of Black Americans. So this is what happened. All right. After Black and Indigenous families lost everything. All right. It says 70-something thousand Black families lost everything. All right, it said approximately $56 billion in today's money was lost or stolen. All right, and a land area that equaled about 10% of the land mass of the United States today. All of it was lost with the fraud of the Freedmen's Bank. And all of it was given to finance poor white people that were coming here from Europe. And that's how these people were able to get 160 acres of land apiece. So again, when you hear white people talk about, oh, my family never owned slaves. My family came here in 1896. And they were poor when they got here, but they pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps. No. The money that was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank is what financed the boat rides over here. Is what financed the boat rides for these poor Europeans to come to the United States. And the 160 acres they were given of land of peace was all land that used to belong to people that were depositing in the Freedmen's Bank. And because we couldn't produce the title, because it was lost in these bank fires, we couldn't do nothing about it. We couldn't do nothing about it. And if we tried to get any sense of justice, they would put the Klan on us. All right. So what came next? The Great Migration. What do you do after you lose everything? All right, you pack up and move. All right, and this is one of the biggest contributors. This is one of the biggest contributors to what was known as the Great Migration. Now let's talk about what happened after we lost everything in the South and moved north. All right, estimated 400,000 Black Americans left the South between 1916 and 1918. By 24, Philadelphia had the nation's second largest urban Black population. And the AME Church became a hub for social connections during this period. Now, we talked about how the church was responsible for coercing people to put everything they had into the Freedmen's Bank. And now, because of the church, we lost everything when the Freedmen's Bank fell. Now we have the church again convincing us, look, just move north. Move north and everything will be okay. Well, let's see what happened when we left the South and moved north. It says mortality rates increased 40% for Black men and 50% for Black women. All right. Common causes of death included cardiovascular disease, lung cancer, and cirrhosis. All right. Our lives got worse as we started to move in these northern cities. All right. The story of the modern civil rights movement is usually told as a regional tale. The efforts of Black American Southerners and Northern allies to overturn Jim Crow segregation in the face of the heated and often violent opposition of white Southern politicians, sheriffs, and racist organizations like the KKK. But there is another 20th century history of civil rights to be told, one that precedes, coincides with, and extends beyond the dramatic events that took place in the South during the late 1950s and early 60s. It begins with the Great Migration. All right. 1910 brought growing numbers of Black Southerners to the city of brotherly love. Let's talk about Pennsylvania for a second. All right. At the same time, the story of Philadelphia's role in the civil rights movement necessarily shifts our attention from the nonviolent protests and legislative triumphs of the 60s to a later struggles over Black power, affirmative action, and welfare rights. Most importantly, telling the story of the Northern Civil Rights Movement requires us to see the problem of race in America as national and not just a Southern issue. And I've said this before. All right. The white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of, regardless if he's from New Jersey or Montgomery. I don't care if he's from New Jersey or Alabama. All right. The white man is the devil. All right. Regardless of geographic location, our oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. All right, this is out of the Philadelphia Tribune. All right, whites only. This is what happened when we left the South and moved to these northern cities. All right, Philadelphia Tribune, white only. All right, Pennsylvania. All right, segregation protests. This was 1980. All right, unsuccessful 30-year effort to desegregate Pittsburgh public schools. All right, February 68. February 68. Let's talk about it. All right, February 2nd, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission ordered Pittsburgh schools to desegregate. It says Black kids still went to segregated schools. All right, Allegheny County. 1976, several plans have been submitted and rejected, and the Human Relations Commission saw the court order to force the district to desegregate. A comprehensive desegregation plan wasn't passed by the school board until 1980. All right, Pittsburgh, not Montgomery. Pittsburgh had segregated schools until 1980. All right, Michigan. Let's talk about Michigan. All right, 1963, segregation protest. All right, Detroit News says Jim Crow must go, all the way up north in Detroit. All right, how redlining from the 30s impacts housing patterns in 9 Michigan cities today. All right, these are U.S. government descriptions of neighborhoods in Kalamazoo, Detroit, Battle Creek, and Pontiac in the 30s. And language that makes it clear that Negro homeowners were bad for real estate, that mixing races hurt home values, and that all white neighborhoods needed protection from lesser populations. The federal government became active in discrimination in the 30s when it began to explicitly use race and ethnicity to determine whether home buyers were eligible for government-backed loans. Blacks were largely blocked from federally backed mortgages, not because of their incomes or credit scores, but because of race. So, after our land and our money was stolen in the fraudulent practices of the Freedmen's Bank, we moved to these northern cities in search of a better life. And when we got up north, we were blocked from home mortgages. All right, the division of neighborhoods persisted in Michigan cities and regions, with Detroit and Saginaw among the most segregated in the nation. All right, here's Ohio, 1938, whites only. Did y'all learn this in school? Or did y'all hear that this was only going on in Selma and Montgomery? This is Ohio, 1938, whites only. Ohio, 1956. All right, when this school district refused to integrate after Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, a group of black mothers in Ohio marched their children to the white school, only to be turned away every day for 2 years. The activism resulted in one of the longest and sustained protests of the civil rights era, one that began before and lasted longer than the Montgomery bus boycott. All right, 1910, Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland became the first city in the United States to institutionalize segregation. Not Selma, Alabama. Baltimore, Maryland became the first city in the United States to institutionalize segregation. Here's Maryland, 1948, whites only. All right, Maryland, 1948. All right, segregation protests. Maryland, 1954, got an angry white mob. All right, Delaware. All right, we got Delaware. Though the segregation of public schools was supported by the separate but equal doctrine that had been upheld by the court, the facilities and services provided for students were hardly equal. This is Delaware Public Archives. Delaware schools were segregated by law. All right, here's Delaware, segregation protest. All right, 1941, New Jersey had 70 districts with some form of formal segregation, meaning legal. Now, sidebar, New Jersey was the last state was the last state to abolish slavery. January 1866, New Jersey was the last state to abolish slavery. All right, World War II. New Jersey's legally sanctioned segregation went mostly by the school boards. All right, our schools are more segregated than Alabama's. All right, according to New Jersey voters. All right, school boycott. Freedom Day, February 3rd, 1964. All right, New York City school boycott, also referred to as Freedom Day, was a large-scale boycott and protest against racial segregation in New York City. Despite being a significant event in the history of the civil rights movement, the New York City boycott does not appear prominently in U.S. textbooks because it runs counter to the dominant narrative that important historical events and civil rights took place in the South. It was the largest civil rights protest of the 1960s. All right, the largest civil rights protests of the 1960s did not occur in the South. It occurred in New York City. So again, after we lost our life savings, after we lost land deeds and titles in the fraud that was the Freedman's Bank, after it collapsed, when 60,000 plus black families lost their life savings, lost the title and the deed to their land that they owned, and this was given to immigrants from Europe, these homesteaders that were coming in the late 1800s. And if we said anything about it, they would put the Klan on us. All right? After we lost everything, we got convinced to move north to have a better life. And as soon as we moved north, we found out the white man up north was just as racist as the white man down south. Again, the largest civil rights protest took place in New York City, not Montgomery, Alabama. All right, New York, 1964. And after all of this, the black to white wealth ratio in the U.S. is 6-1, which means on average, white families have 6 times as much wealth as black families. Again, after everything was stolen from us, money and land grants, deeds, titles, after everything was stolen from us, all right, by people like Eli Thayer, all right, by people like George Peabody, by people like the Cook brothers, all right, after billions of dollars was stolen from black people out of the Freedman's Bank, after land titles were stolen from black people out of the Freedman's Bank and given to foreigners that were coming here from Europe, these homesteaders, after we lost all of our generational wealth, moved up north to these northern cities, found out the white man up north was just as racist as the white man down south. We just read that the biggest civil rights protest of the 60s took place in New York City. After all of this, the white man still tells us to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. All right, the white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Now, before we get out of here tonight, we're finna get into the Bible. Before we get out of here tonight, let's get into the Bible for a second. Deuteronomy 28:43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. And that's true. That's true. That's true. We read earlier, estimated $56 billion in today's money was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank. All right. An unknown amount of land, approximately 10% of the area of the United States in land deeds and titles, was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank or mysteriously burnt up in the fires. And these poor white people from dilapidated villages in Europe were reaping all of the benefits that were stolen from black people in the fraud of the Freedmen's Bank. And again, the culprits are people like George Peabody. All right, the Cook brothers, Eli Thayer. All right, these are the criminals. These are the criminals involved in this fraud. And this is how the stranger got up above us very high, and we were brought down low. All right, let's drop that. Let's drop that. Let's go to Ecclesiasticus 12:10. Ecclesiasticus 12:10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. For those of y'all that think that there's good white people out there. The Bible says, never trust thine enemy. The white man is our enemy. All right, the white man is our enemy, is our 400-year open enemy. For like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. You ever get a rust spot on a car? There's nothing you can do about it. All right, that rust is going to spread. Just like the wickedness of our enemy is going to spread. And there's nothing we can do about it. But it's right here in the Bible. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and end the class. All right, I appreciate y'all tuning in. All right, every Monday, 9 p.m., Monday night history class. Tuesday night brotherhood class, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And Wednesday night, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., the podcast, Cry Out, Spirit Not podcast. And with that, we'll do one courtesy salute. Shalom, Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Barakatham, Yahweh Shemal Thumb Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai. Class dismissed.